Criterion have just announced their December 2020 slate of releases, and as usual, I do have some thoughts about these. So stick around if you want to find out a bit about these films and why I may or may not be excited to pick these up. Hello, my name's Elliot, and this channel is all about collecting Blu-rays, and I love Criterion here. You know that if you've been on the channel before, and I always get excited every month on the 15th when these announcements get made. And there's always something that surprises me, or there's always something that gets me excited. So this is always one of my favourite times of the month. Criterion have announced 4 titles for release in December 2020 and no box sets. So we were expecting at some point the Wong Kar-wai box set that would include Chungking Express and In the Mood for Love and Fallen Angels, etc. But it seems like that's not coming in 2020 now, unless they do another surprise announcement maybe a bit later this month. But usually when they've done that, they've been announcing the box sets before the usual slate of releases of that month. So it may be 2021 when we get that Wong Kar-wai box set. But you know what, I'm patient, I can wait for it, and it has me very excited, just the prospect of that box set. So yeah, that's just something I wanted to say before I go into these 4 films. The first film to be released by Criterion in December 2020 is this little film called Crash, directed by David Cronenberg. Now this film has been a talking point a lot lately for Blu-ray collectors because the Blu-ray label Arrow Video previously announced that they were releasing a Blu-ray and a 4K UHD Blu-ray of Crash in November 2020. So there's been a lot of discussion lately, and people were wondering if Criterion would release this because Arrow Video, they tend to, where they can, release a film in the UK and in the US at the same time. So we've seen that with a number of films over the last few years. But with Crash, that was just a UK release. So the US and Canada, they didn't get Crash announced for that region. So that led people to believe that maybe Criterion had the US rights for Crash, and it turns out they did. And this is because Criterion already has a number of David Cronenberg films in the collection, so it makes sense to try to get more of his films to join the others. There are great films like The Brood and Scanners in the Criterion collection already. I would personally love to see Dead Ringers back in the Criterion collection, or The Fly, or maybe even some of his more modern works like Cosmopolis and Maps to the Stars. But that's on another tangent. Crash is a film that I'm sure many people will be excited to have, and if you're not already importing the 4K UHD Blu-ray, I'm sure you'll be very excited to get this Criterion disc. So let's just talk a bit about what's on the disc and some of the details. So Crash will be spine number 1059 in the Criterion collection. It's taken from a new 4K digital restoration, supervised by DOP Peter Suschitzky. So this is the same restoration that Arrow have. So I'm expecting, in terms of picture quality, between the Blu-rays, not the 4K, but the 2 Blu-rays will look pretty much the same. I would expect that. And there's a 5.1 surround DTS HD master audio soundtrack, and they've both been approved by David Cronenberg. Where it gets interesting for a lot of the Cronenberg and Crash fans is looking at the special features, because it appears to me that a lot of these features are unique to the Criterion disc and will not be featured on the Arrow Video releases. So there's an audio commentary from 1997 featuring Cronenberg, and this, I believe, I might be wrong, please let me know in the comments if so, this doesn't feature on the Arrow Video release. On the Arrow Video release, there is an audio commentary, a new one from Adrian Martin. So that does not appear on this Criterion disc. So both releases have different commentaries. So if you're a superfan, you're going to want both releases to get both of these commentaries. The next feature listed on the Criterion site is a press conference from the 1996 Cannes Film Festival, featuring all of the filmmakers and actors and lots of people basically. And that does not appear on the Arrow Video release either. So that is unique to this Criterion release. There's also a Q&A from 1996 with Cronenberg and J.G. Ballard, who wrote the story, at the National Film Theatre in London, and that does not appear on the Arrow video release either. And then there's the behind-the-scenes footage and press interviews from 1996. There's some trailers, and there's an essay from film critic Jessica Kiang in the booklet. So, those features differ pretty much entirely from what is on the Arrow video disc. If you want to find out what's on the Arrow video Blu-ray that's coming out in November, please do check out the video that I made about those Arrow video announcements. I'll link it below and I'll include it in the cards on this video. Worth noting here, but I'm not going to beat the dead horse that I've already beaten a lot. There's no 4K release from Criterion, and many people were thinking, would Criterion end the year's announcements with a 4K announcement? And it turns out they've not. This pretty much confirms that there's no plans for the near future anyway. So that's very interesting. For some people, I'm sure that's disappointing. I'm somewhere in the middle of that. Like, I'm disappointed because obviously I would love 4K discs because I have now got a 4K TV and a player, and I'm collecting a lot of 4K films. But it's not going to stop me from buying Criterions. I'm not going to boycott Criterion because they've not announced 4K titles. So it's all good. It's all good. It's interesting. That's what it is. It's interesting. So there's no 4K disc of Crash, but there's a great Blu-ray from the looks of things. So something to be very excited about. The second of the 4 titles being released by Criterion in December has me very, very excited indeed, because this is one of my favourite films of all time, by one of my favourite filmmakers of all time. It's the film Muchette from Robert Bresson, and this is coming out on December 8th, 2020. It's going to be spine number 363 because it did previously exist on a now out of print DVD. This is great news because Robert Bresson is already a celebrated filmmaker within the Criterion Collection, with many of my other favourite films like Pickpocket and L'Argent. So this is a great one to have back on Blu-ray. A few years ago, we did have a Blu-ray in the UK of Muchette from Artificial Eye, but that has long been out of print now and it's very hard to get hold of for a good price. So it's great to finally have this back in print on a great Blu-ray. If you're not familiar with Bresson as a filmmaker, he has a particular style that is what some people might call distant or detached, but I often consider it active film watching, where you have to actively engage with what's on the screen to get something out of it. Otherwise, it's what people might call slow or boring cinema, which I disagree with, but I totally see why people think that about his films. I just think you have to engage with them in the right way, and if you do, you can get an awful lot out of them. His type of filmmaking, it looks at social issues, it looks at very emotional stories, and the emotions are packed into these films, but not in a typical way. So he doesn't use sweeping music throughout the film. Like, music is very spare in his film, but when music is used, it signals to you that this is an important moment because you're so not used to hearing music throughout the film. So that's a very interesting technique. A lot of his films are shot on a 50mm lens, which many people say is the closest to the human eye. So it's not embellished, it doesn't look like cinema sometimes, but I think his films are very beautifully shot as well, beautifully directed. So Muchette is a great introduction if you want to get into some Bresson. So looking at the special features, it says it's from a new 4K digital restoration with an uncompressed monaural soundtrack. This is very exciting because it will be an improvement on the older Blu-ray that I talked about earlier. There's an audio commentary from 2006 by Tony Raines. Now, Tony Raines is one of the best commentators on film. Like, I absolutely love a good Tony Raines commentary. So that's very exciting as well. There's a documentary called Au Hasard Bresson, which is a reference to his film Au Hasard Balthazar. and there's a segment of a 1967 episode of the French television series Cinema, featuring on-set interviews with Bresson and the actors. There's an original trailer and there's an essay in the booklet as well. And it's got the classic artwork of Muchette, so there's no new artwork, but I'm very excited for this 4K digital restoration of a Bresson film. Sign me up. So that's out December 8th. If you're enjoying this video about the Criterion Collection announcements for December 2020, please do consider subscribing to the channel below, because you would hear about these videos as soon as they get uploaded. And I do a lot of these about Criterion, so if that's your kind of thing, this is probably a good place to be. Anyway, back to the announcements. Also coming out on December 8th, 2020 is the release Symbiote Psychotaxiplasm, 2 takes by William Greaves. Now this is very exciting because this is another DVD upgrade. This is spine number 360 in the Criterion Collection. I haven't actually seen the 2 films in this set, but I've heard a lot about them from many people in the Criterion groups online. I know that it's a very revolutionary kind of filmmaking, blending fiction and documentary, a very meta-narrative kind of thing. I don't know much more beyond that. I know it's counterculture kind of filmmaking. So I'm very excited to finally see these, and it's great to have them on Blu-ray. So you're getting both films. You're getting Symbiote Psychotaxiplasm Part 1 and Symbiote Psychotaxiplasm Part 2.5, which was made in 2005. The first one was made in 1968, so there was quite a time gap between the two. So the set is featuring both of these. There's a documentary called Discovering William Greaves from 2006. There's an interview from 2006 with actor Steve Buscemi. There's a trailer, and then there's an essay in the booklet as well. So this is a great release, one I'm very excited for. It's going to be a blind buy, but again, many people have recommended it to me. So I'm excited for this one coming out December 8th. And the final film releasing in December 2020 from Criterion, coming out on the 15th, is the film Amoris Perros from Alejandro Inarritu. This is going to be a very exciting release for a lot of people. I've seen this film a few times now in the past, and my opinion has varied a lot on this film. Sometimes I watch it and I really don't like it, and then sometimes I do watch it and I really like it. So each time I revisit this film, I tend to have a completely different opinion on it. It's one of those films that has lots of different characters and storylines that then come to intertwine, often in very tragic ways. This is something that became a bit of a style for Inarritu, because he made Amores Perros. This was followed by 21 Grams, and then a few years later he made the film Babel. And these are often considered a trilogy. I've forgotten what people call it. Is it the trilogy of death or something, or trilogy of misery, or something like that, something negative anyway. But yeah, those stories are often very difficult, very tragic, and yeah, you're either going to really like that kind of thing or you're not. And I tend to flip-flop between those differing opinions. I think he's a great director, obviously very capable at directing and making these stories. I think one of my favourite films from him is actually Birdman. I think Birdman might be my favourite. I did enjoy The Revenant, but on a rewatch, The Revenant is very much like his older films, where they're very tragic and a bit miserable, you know, a bit kind of dismal. That, you know, they don't leave you with full of hope. You might be left full of despair after watching one of his films. And I kind of think that about Amoris Perros, but I'm definitely going to revisit it on this Blu-ray because, yeah, it's a film that keeps calling me back. Even though sometimes I watch it and I don't like it, it calls me back for one reason or another. So it's very interesting that Criterion have this. Spy number 1060. So it's from a new 4K digital restoration supervised by Inarritu himself, along with the DOP Rodrigo Prieto, and there's a 5.1 surround soundtrack on the disc as well. There's a new interview with Inarritu and filmmaker Pavel Pawlikowski, who recently entered the Criterion Collection with Cold War, which is a great film. I love Cold War, so I'm very interested to see what their interview's like. New conversation between Inarritu and the actors in the film. There's a new documentary on the behind the scenes footage. There's rehearsal footage with narration by Inarritu. There's a new interview with composer Gustavo Santaolalla. There's a new video essay by film scholar Paul Julian Smith. There's music videos for the songs from the film's soundtrack. There's a trailer and some essays in the booklet. So there's a ton of stuff on this disc. I know this will have people very excited. I think it's great to have more Mexican cinema within the Criterion Collection. I know that's something that they're working on going forward, is looking at films from different cultures and different countries and trying to represent them more. I know that South Korean cinema is something they want to focus on more. They want to focus more on African American and Black cinema. And Mexican cinema, it's been talked about a lot. I know Guillermo del Toro has been working with Criterion to help restore some older Mexican films. So that'll be very interesting as well. So it's just great to have more representation for Mexican filmmakers within the collection. So that's Amores Perros, set to be a great release. But do let me know in the comments below which of these releases you are most excited for, because I imagine it's going to be quite split this month, because that's 4 great titles that I know many people adore. So it'll be very interesting to hear your opinion in the comments section below. Before I go, I'd like to thank my Patreon supporters, my Fellini fanatics. I'll include your names on the screen right now. And if you've not already checked out my Patreon page, please go and check it out, because I'm going to be doing lots of exclusive videos about collecting the Criterion films. And if you're a member on the Patreon, you can request certain videos from me. So if you want to hear about a particular filmmaker in the collection, or a particular genre or country or whatever, then you can hop on Patreon and request that kind of video. So I'll include the link below to my Patreon, and it's patreon.com/boutique Blu-rays. So please do go and check it out. I'll be back with more videos about the Criterion Collection and Blu-ray collecting very soon, but if you want to stick around on the channel, by all means click one of the videos that's going to be suggested to you right now, because I know it's going to be a good one whichever one you click. I'll be back very soon with more videos, so until then, stay well and keep watching great films.